Hey, and welcome to another chat with Jeff Granville and myself, Veruschka Normandeau. And today we're going to chat a little bit about the wisdom of the heart and the power of the heart and its role in healing. And it also possibly being the root of most diseases and illnesses that we manifest as a result of unresolved emotions that really stem from original heart pain, disappointment, closing our hearts, feeling like we're unlovable. So yeah, I've really been, Rose Yoga, tapping into heart courage really is about removing our fear and embracing our courage to really have our heart inform us more, have our heart feel safe to blossom and reveal itself. So here, Jeff has probably something to chime in of your experience, even with heart math.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you, Veruschka. It's so wonderful to join you again. And you are right, nail on the head here with one of my favorite topics about the innate wisdom of the heart and how it connects us to source. And when we are hurt, traumatized, victimized, when we're angry, when we are really focused on fight or flight, we are disconnected from our innate connection to source, which comes through the heart. I know that our divine connection comes through in different parts of our body. And when we are triggered and closed off to that source, it's like trying to run your computer without being hooked to the internet, right? You only have the programs that are on board, and most of those are repetitive, defensive and fearful. And when we are triggered into that state of being, all our life force energy mechanisms in our body are switched off. They go to fight or flight, and we dwindle and we perish. We are capable of being connected to source all the time. It's just if we're mindfully aware of it and how to do it. And I think that's the key to health and well-being right there.
Yeah, so today I feel like I was asking, like, I wonder what the message is that we need to concentrate on right now. And even though it actually is the the core reason why we even do this emotional work, it's like it never ceases to amaze me how easy it is to forget about the heart, and that it really is the source of doing emotional rewiring and speaking to the heart of the matter. How are you? What's
Yeah.
wrong? And it's all about here, but why do we then go and put our hands here like, oh, I'm so sorry, or and I like to talk story and use my own life, whatever we're going through as an example that really informs us. Okay, like, well, what am I still struggling with, or what is this reminding me of, or what is the current story that I'm having optical illusions, optical illusions in my life about. And yeah, so today's topic is a little bit about the heart of the matter, which could be an ongoing topic. Um, but what I really wanted to share about is, fear and grief. And it really honestly stems back to the heart, like the body keeps the score, the body remembers the things, and then we have our day-to-day obstacles of like, why are we still getting triggered? I thought we've already removed some of these blocks, but they're all like echoes of something that originally happened at some point in time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so one thing I've been working through too is like the original wounds of, feeling accepted or not accepted by the parental figures. And, if you don't feel completely safe and completely loved by a parent, that does contribute, in my case, to lack of identity, lack of really knowing and being able to own who I am, because it does wear on self-esteem, self-confidence, um, worthiness. And so, that's why I'm in personal development, because this has been like the main story of my life, of that I keep working on, learning about practical applications, right? And what I've been revisiting grief, and like the grief of the child that didn't get their needs met, didn't get validated, still feels unlovable in whatever ways I'm still manifesting that mirror of feeling unlovable. And I know last year I went through a lot of core fear, like just a lot of fear, not being fully aware of the root cause, knowing that in my first 6 years, I had a lot of trauma, a lot of stacked trauma, a lot of loss, a lot of moving, a lot of caregiver changes. So for my body, my mom was framed and went to jail when I was 4. So it's like here I was with her hippie mom 24/7 every day of my life, and then she's gone. No one talks about her. So in my child body, I lost my mother. It's like, even though I visited her, but it took like a year and a half to visit her in jail. It's still like there were initial big traumatic losses, but they don't really, they're not active in this now life, right? But why do we still have like that grief, that loss in our heart? There's still like an echo that needs to be revisited. So we remanifest situations that are so unique to us in order for that volcano to be touched so it can erupt, to be cleared, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So in this like recent episode of visiting the fear and feeling the fear, and now like going into some remaining grief, um, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and people pretty much across the board, if they've never done personal work, but then they have like the big loss, they get the divorce, or they lose their child, or, like heavy things that where they're having to confront who they are. And so one of the things I heard recently was like, how do you heal from grief in the heart when you feel like that fundamental rejection or that loss? And studies say and show that the people who find and can see more beauty and gratitude in their life, they actually have the capacity to overcome the grief quicker and find joy again. If they had never had that practice, they're going to be identified with that loss and grief for a long time. So that the practical hands-on application is really, to start the gratitude list, to do the things that make you feel better, to see beauty in the world. And I'm so grateful, because that has been just inherently a necessary practice for me, by living in beautiful places with lots of nature, and really like receiving and acknowledging the beauty. Because if we're just only identified with the lack and the pain, like that's all we're going to see. And so there really isn't, you're just going to create more disease if you can't have space for the beauty to come in and start mending the heart.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, from your perspective, what's your experience? You shared something about like the soul coming into the heart. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And I first just want to acknowledge how important it is, the way you are so open and vulnerable. It's really important for others to be able to see that, because then that gives them permission to be open and vulnerable as well. And that's really the key to dealing with any type of trauma, any type of grief and loss, is that when we are triggered with grief, It's a repeating loop. And if we don't look outside that loop, we'll never break free of it. And, we mentioned heart math and their 30 plus year of investigating and proving the wisdom, the innate wisdom of the heart, and how the heart has 40,000 sensory neurocytes. It's actually got neurotissue in the heart. So it has short-term and long-term memory. It actually communicates with the brain and mind body in 8 different ways. And it's trying to take consciousness and our soul's mission and express it out in human form. But when we're triggered with grief or loss or anger or fear, it's like being offline and disconnected from that innate wisdom, our life force energy. And that's what gives us the constant update. So when you mentioned, of course, your childhood with the attachment. And as Gabor Mate teaches in his movie, The Wisdom of Trauma, and his book, The Myth of Normal, is that attachment versus authenticity is the first injury. When we have to set aside who we truly are and show up in the world with a different aspect of ourselves to survive that trauma, that aspect actually has a different worldview because your original innocent self had no idea that the world was a harmful place. If you have a secure attachment with your care provider, your main person, then you're innocent. But once you realize from a traumatic event or loss or grief that the world is not always a safe place, you create an aspect of yourself to protect your true self. And then the emotions of the heart are depressed. That's what causes depression, emotional depression. You're holding that to protect the protector aspect. Like Richard Swartz teaches internal family systems, and he talks about parts work where this part of me was hurt. So this part of me is the protector and this part is the manager. So what it does is it fractures our agency of our true being into manageable pieces to protect that part of ourself that was hurt. So it's really all of the thought leaders of the day, all the mentors that I've learned from, all of the world leaders say that trauma is the gateway. It's not marijuana, it's not alcohol. Trauma is the gateway to all mental health and physical health disorders. And it can go all the way to bipolarism, schizophrenia, and multiple personality disorders. Because when you experience trauma once, it might be, oh, well, when I was 4, that happened to me. And that's an explicit memory. You remember an explicit date and time that something happened to you. But when you're traumatized over and over again and it becomes chronic, then there's the region of the brain, the thalamus gets overagitated. It tells the hippocampus to give it an emotional significance to the memory. And then those memories get strung together. Instead of it being a timeline where this happened to me on this date and this happened to me on this date, but this is who I am, those memories turn from explicit to implicit, which means it implicates that it's you. It implies this is who I am. So it's actually true because when we create an aspect of ourselves to deal with the trauma, it has a different worldview, it has a different posture, it has a different reactionary set point and hypervigilance because of my surroundings. And most importantly, it has a different epigenetic expression. Instead of the DNA expression of who we truly are, we are now expressing an epigenetic expression of our worldview, of our belief. And like Bruce Lipton says, your perception of reality is more deterministic than reality itself. You actually create the world that you perceive. And if you're perceiving it from a place of fear and grief and angst, then that's what you're going to manifest. When you are in the worldview of trauma and protection and hypervigilance, that's the level of consciousness you're at. That's what you radiate. That's what you get back. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, a loop of repeating. And humans are actually wired to repeat things until they get it right. So it's a really important thing. And one of the things I love about what I study in the geeky science part of it is that until we have something new enter our consciousness, we are going to stay in that loop. But when you hear something that resonates, like if you're listening to this and what we're sharing resonates with you, really feel into what is my truth with that. And then it'll open you up. It'll open you up to an aha moment. And like you mentioned, when you are in grief and you're stuck in that narrow focus of survival, looking around for beauty in nature, looking around for the acts of others, really can break you out of that loop and open you up to divinity. Allow your divinity to enter, allow that connection of soul through the heart, and then you can start expressing that in the world, and you reintegrate. What I do with my stir method is reintegrate those aspects of yourself. And I do want to touch on your invitation because talking about how the soul enters the world, because I was turned on to a one of my favorite thought leaders of the day is Federico Faggin, and he was on the Know Thyself podcast. And he is actually the inventor of the microchip through Intel. He's the inventor of touchscreen. And he is like a world-renowned physicist that had an aha moment, and it turned all of his attention as a full bandwidth on consciousness. And he actually says that the soul enters the 3D world through the human heart and collapses wave into particle and creates time and space with the rhythm of the heart. And it's so amazing because if anybody's ever seen the heart math, it's like here's time across the bottom of the graph, and here's on the vertical is your heart rate variance. Your heart rate goes up and down. So when your heart beats inside your 3D body, it's actually creating space over time. So it just, to me, it really rings true. And like all of this sciencey stuff I like is it helps buy-in. And I really love utilizing that when people feel stuck because we can show up and we can offer something new that kind of gives them that aha moment and breaks them out. Like you're mentioning, finding beauty. The best way to serve and get out of your own depression is to look in your immediate proximity and find something good you can do for someone else or for Mother Nature, like even picking up a piece of trash. You're going outside of yourself, you're breaking open a little bit. So there's little things we can do and then turn those into big changes.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much here. And this is not, I mean, the reason why we're even here is because our natural duality. This is the nature of it, and there's nothing bad about that. It's just more empowering ourselves, informing each other, reminding each other that we're not just the black or the white. Like there is in the dark of the night, the sun is going to rise again. It just
Yeah.
seems like, what is the sun? Where is it? I don't believe it. It's just the nature that there is going to be the cycle. And, today we just want to talk about and stress like, no, there are two sides and there are ways to activate bringing the light back in or bringing the levity back in. But sometimes it just feels like we're only filled with that one possibility. And so I feel like, what we're going through in this day and age or through all the ages is just like the grief of our humanity, of injustice, of imbalance, of unfairness, all of that. and our desire to even be here. If we keep manifesting things that challenge our reason to be here in our own purpose, we are going to create illness, right? And want someone else to fix it when it is really our health is in our hands, or we can co-create being able to regenerate ourselves. And the heart is always, and in my work with emotional freedom technique, is the starting point, because we have to first check in, how do we feel about this? If we're sick or have an injury, we're going to have an opinion about it. We're going to have a feeling about it, even if it's like, it is unfair. It is unfair that that person has cancer. It is unfair, that the hormones are getting out of balance, or that we have changed. That is the nature of being, is change, right? But we want to have like that safety and stability for things to be the same or to be good. And so we need, in this day and age, modalities and examples of like, okay, can we heal? Can we do this ourselves? Can we survive this next trauma that might fall in our laps? And as life is infinitely more creative, and we do have unforeseen things we have to deal with. And so I've been marinating on, all of this fear that came up for me last year, and it really reminded me of my teacher, Sonia Sophia, used to always say when she was teaching EFT, like, life boils down to two fears: the fear of death and the fear of loss of love. And it always stuck with me, because really, in the end, if you look at all those things, it's true. They usually filter down for like our desire to even be here, right? And so I've been thinking about, like, okay, how do I release more fear when I'm really hip to my story? Like how it's so evasive to be like, okay, fear and anxiety or panic in the body. I love you. I'm a safe place. But how can you offer yourself safety when you don't feel safe? Like, fear is so tricky because it's so primal, right? It is the fight or flight. It is the first chakra. It's our root that everything else builds on. So you can't kind of fake fear out. Like, fear is not stable, right? And so I was just doing a releasing ceremony this week. And when I was finally able to actually say the words of what I was afraid of, and I was like making a prayer for my whole family lineage, for their heart to be healed. Like, that was the thing that came through first. Like, I really want heart healing for my family. And that's just a prayer. That's not me trying to control anything, do anything. It's just my sincere prayer. And then for myself, I was like, I want to release this fear. And then it became very clear of being unlovable. And it was so, like, it was a shocker, but it was also refreshing to be able to define, like, why are we motivated to do anything, right? If we don't feel seen, respected, accepted, worthy of being like included in the group or the organizations, or we want to have that feeling of belonging, and if we get those, in my case, original experiences of not feeling loved by the parent, and it becomes like the mirror ball life, as I call it, where you're only seeing reflected back that you're unwanted or not desired, or didn't make the team, whatever. It was like, wow, it was honestly, I did a 7-day equinox retreat, and it was like that being able to define that made the 7 days worth it of like, oh, I got my gold star. I cracked the nut of like this was the issue. And it might seem like so simple and benign, but it really filters back down to the fear of loss of love, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then you might as well be dead. You might as well want to die if you're not going to be met, right? Or feel received by humanity, because we need each other. We need each other for purpose, for reflection, to feel valued, to be inspired. And so I just think, I hope that it's valuable to be talking about this so that we don't take ourselves so seriously, because it feels like with our political environment, it does feel like life and death every day, just survival, the right to be here. So it's so important for us to have our emotional intelligence clear and to really know what we're feeling so that we can operate more resourcefully. So, right now for me, what's front and center is just feeling resourced to deal with these challenges, right? And it really comes back to how does my heart feel, and having the backbone to see, feel, identify, and then take action,
Mhm.
And so yeah, how's that hitting you?
Oh my gosh, like square in the face with so many things, or right to the heart, maybe I should say. And it really, it really makes me reflect on, there's no lack of triggers in our environment, in the world. And if you look at the duality of, human consciousness is exploding. There's so many people on the path to wellness and enlightenment and consciousness, but it takes a trigger in order for you to get there. And it's like I love the term that, you know, we're just in an illusion of duality, that there is no separateness. And another thing Federico Fagin says is that God, love, truth, consciousness, everything are just synonymous. They're synonyms for the same word, right? So um, Wayne Dyer says we are not humans looking for a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings looking for a human experience, right? And in order to have a human experience, we have to have a veil between the all-knowing consciousness and who we are as humans. And the more we're into fear and grief, the further we disconnect from that source. We're not, we're human beings. We're part human and we're part being. And that's the illusion of duality. But we have to have that duality. And it makes me reflect on a friend of mine, Elke McCartney, who downloaded the book is called Downloading a Friendly Universe, where she says that love is the motivator for every actions humans take. Even something like terrorism is a retaliation for something they lost that they loved. So we might look at it as an evil act, but to them, they're acting out of love. So love, and it's so amazing because current neuroscience teaches us that love and pain, love and suffering are co-located in the brain. The amygdala is either tipping towards love or tipping towards pain. So it's not that there's fear and anger and pain in the world, in the universe. It creates love. It's the illusion of separation from it. It's not, it's like darkness cannot exist in the presence of light. So if we're feeling angst and pain and suffering, it's just the lack of love. It's our separation from our innate being of love. So the counteraction, that the coin always has two sides. right? That it's um, the degree in which you've loved is the degree in which you can be hurt. So if you're feeling hurt, it's the knowing that it's the lack of love. It is what's missing in your life. And that's what we need to cultivate because we don't, it's like if you're sitting in meditation and you have bombarding thoughts and you try to resist those thoughts, what you resist persists and it just gets worse. So, like I say, we don't protest war, we march for peace. We put our energy towards that in which we want to cultivate. So, just the awareness and the understanding allows us to make an adjustment. If we're aware, if we're feeling triggered, if we're feeling guilt, if we're feeling angst and anger and grief, we know that we will be stuck in that repetitive loop unless we seek love, if we seek beauty, if we look for it in our environment and in other people, if we look at other people's examples like you did of being open and vulnerable, and that, hey, we're still okay. We can crack open a little bit and let the light in, and it's just the illusion of the separation of love. That is the driving force for all mental illness, all disease in our physical body and in our spiritual body, is just that separation from love. And what I love too is David Hawking's book, Power versus Force, where he studies kinesiology, which is the science behind muscle testing. And he says that a human can't have a thought unless the answer already exists in the quantum. So, what that means is that a human can experience a problem unless the solution already exists. And the only gap between the two is a human thought or winding of lack or separation. That if you come to zero, if you come to that place, like we breathe our way to center, you tap your way, you biohack your way into that center, and immediately love will come in. And that's the cure for everything.
And it's something that just bears repetition because here we are, right? It's still like
Absolutely.
we're turning a tide from all the old ways that has been modeled to us that we've been conditioned and imprinted with. And part of us still believes. It's kind of like we can have the affirmation and hopeful thinking, but there's always still the default, like, oh yeah, well, life is
Oh, yeah.
dark and
Yeah.
it's always going to have a bad ending. And we're like, no, but there could be, um so yeah, around the heart and being aware of what we're feeling, I wanted to draw attention to, a lot of my clients I've dealt with have breast cancer, which is pretty much an epidemic in our country or in our society. And a lot of people are able to correct it, with diet and different things, extreme things. Um, but I have found that a lot of times, how we can find the root of things in the actual words of things, but it came to me when I first started working with women who were going through it, the fear, the panic, the next steps of, well, where are your breasts positioned? There actually are heart pillows. Interesting. What are heart pillows like? Well, as women, we nurture, we feed, we grow human bodies from this incredible nourishing product that we produce. But do they ever receive anything in return? Mm,
Hmm.
not so much. They're kind of like, these beautiful things that get to be celebrated in art, right? And in marketing in Europe and topless marketing and all the taboo things, things of beauty. But why do they physically suffer so much? Because we store, they're kind of like buffering our heart and all the pain. They get to be like the filter for the pain of all of the unworthiness, unmet expectations, rejection. So I just wanted to point to, like, again, the physical things are sometimes so literal from all of the undigested negative emotions. And if women and people can actually start seeing, okay, what were my breasts protecting me from? And being able to identify that, I can't tell you how swiftly women have gone through the process and received the help, that the perfect health they needed to get through situations, but they were able to resolve things by taking the time to actually alchemize the things that just were thrown in the closet, but then not ever acknowledged, right? So again, I just want to, we're just having an open conversation, but emphasizing in our humanness, like, no, we're all in this together and we're all walking each other home. Like, it is so literal what we're holding in the fibers of our bodies and the fibers of our being, right? And it's just, it's so important to bring this, what I call nourishing compassion and safety, like core safety, back to ourselves, because self-love isn't something that was modeled to us. Hopefully, we're able to model this to the next generations coming. But
Yeah.
just coming back to emphasizing, like, it's important to honor why we have the heavy emotions that are coming up, but also being co-stewards of redirecting the energy and not letting it fester, to keep moving. And that, probably we might approach things differently in the masculine and feminine ways.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious, how you deal with emotional things.
Thank you. I want to really connect with what you're saying too about the chest pillows, and the guarding, they guard the heart. And as you talked about in tapping, the EFT is that you find the sore spots, right? And I do that with my stir technique, is the myofascial knots. And in the fascia, the living matrix of the system, the body, it holds the memory, it holds the trauma, and it blocks it off from consciousness. And through a study I went through on traumatic shock because of my son's leukemia, I found out that 85% of women with breast cancer have just been through some sort of traumatic shock. And women are the most emotionally connected and empathetic beings on earth, and they hold trauma, not just their own, because they're not allowed to speak their truth or be their truth. They've been suppressed for so long, but they become empathetic and hold everybody else's trauma as well. So this is where it's held. And if it's blocked off from consciousness, it's just gonna fester, like you said, and then it's gonna manifest as cancer and disease. So spontaneous healing is that aha moment of release. Okay. And how I deal with grief and heartache is way different now than as I was raised, because I had loving parents and grandparents, but I don't remember hearing "I love you" until I was in my 20s, when I was saying it to them and they felt open to reciprocate. So we're trying to stop this karmic wheel of disconnection from emotion in one generation. And that's why it's such a fast frequency. But and I think I mentioned in one of our talks or before the show, is that I'm just so grateful that I practice what I preach, because being able to understand, being aware, awareness, understanding, and adjustment, that our heart is our innate wisdom. It is our connection to our soul. And if we're out of alignment with it, all we have to do is breathe our way to our heart and let our heart release its emotion. Because it's like a pain signal. If you suppress it from the outside with painkillers, the signal just gets louder, right? And it's more trauma. But if you pay attention to that signal, the pain goes away. If you acknowledge it, thank it for the message, it goes away. And that's the same thing with heartache and angst and depressive feelings. Once they feel felt, it's the beginning of every healing journey. So with me, I know that I have practiced so much going to my heart and being into that space, the physiology of our divinity, when we're aligned with our coherent heart and mind and soul and gut and root connection vertically, and we're laterally integrated between problem and solution. That's the physiology of our divinity, and that's the space where every download of an invention, a poem, a song, every math equation found in nature is in that moment where you're in alignment. You're not over focused on the problem, and you're curious and open about the solution. And that cracks us wide open. So for me, I've going through a divorce, I've had many issues in my life. And the further I go down this line of getting connected to my heart, and the more I connect and breathe with my heart, the easier it is to process. And of course, it's always nice to have a good friend to talk to, like our talk the other day. So like you said, we're built to connect with other people and commiserate and be seen and felt. And
Yeah.
that's how we heal collectively.
And that's so interesting because it's the moment again to vulnerability that it connects us immediately. Like if you're sharing your truth, then I could be like, oh, hey, this happened to me too yesterday. And then it's like immediately it tips the scales from being like, oh, they're here and I'm here, but it's more like, no, we share our humanity that way. And we have to wrap this up time-wise, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
say a few things. So yeah, and in the stuff that we shared today and just awareness, I feel like everyone there's not one size fits all, but if we can help each other remember like our heart is so powerful and it is capable of healing. So I feel like the main message I wanted to bring here today is like your heart can be broken multiple times, and it is powerful enough to self-heal in miraculous ways. It's more that we have to get, the idea in here to help navigate the way, and it is really so profound, our mindset and what we're cultivating with it, right? And so I just want to bring the message in that resting and returning to peace, that something you just said reminded me of like the new ways to react are not knee-jerk reactions to the triggers, but actually taking the pause to breathe, to not react. And we want to so badly, but that's how it's always been done, and it's never going to change anything. And my favorite operating word the last 5 years has been temperance.
Hmm.
Temperance, like, not maybe doesn't sound so fun, in our
Yeah.
action
Yeah.
thriller, psychological thriller drama world. But no, it's time to get off of that train. It is time to allow ourselves the FOMO and rest. And however we can start informing our bodies that we do have the power, that stopping doesn't mean dying, you know, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that resting is actually going to create more resourcefulness. And just to honor the pause, that why we have even seasons, and to allow for like listening to our body for these seasons. And, to go back to the fear and grief, I remember one of the things that helped me a lot too from Osho, formerly Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. He'd always say, like, oh, well, if love is the most important thing, love is still so evasive, right? But he kept saying, love and hate are not the opposite sides of the coin. They're actually the same side of the coin, love and hate. Like you can only hate because you love them so much, right? Or
Yep.
you love this so much, but the opposite side is fear. The opposite of love is actually fear. And it really helped me a lot because it's like when we are in fear, there is an absence of love. Like you can't even muster that up. You can't fake it till you make it. And that's why it's so important to get to the heart of the matter so that we can redirect and not believe in what the body is just trying to inform us of something, right? And
Mhm.
for us
Mhm.
to be able to pay attention and not perpetuate these drama stories. And so my mission for this year is really to step out of drama and not keep being a magnet to that, because that's what the original 6 years only knows. It only knows that repetitive cycle, right? And so being part of the solution is being part of the peace movement, like what you were saying, demonstrate for peace instead
Yeah,
of
yeah.
being part of the war. Like I don't, we have, we all create those wars. So that's my parting message today, is showing curiosity to our heart and really bringing in the nourishing compassion to our heart so that we can have that space for it to regenerate itself. Because we only need like that 0.5% millimeter of like possibility for the miracle to set in. So on that note of the heart of the matter, any parting closing words, Jeff?
Oh, no, I just love everything you just said. I really resonate. It resonates with my heart, and it really makes me just focus on the point that when we're triggered in fight or flight, there's one stimulus and one reaction. But through the power of the pause and that awareness and being open, there can be the same stimulus and infinite possible responses. So we go from being reactive to open and responsive. And that tips the scales. It opens us up to the infinite. And I agree, hate or love and fear are the same coin because it all comes from love. Love is creation, and we are never separate from it. We just think we are, and we think our way. So, another thing I love is you can't think your way out of something that needs to be felt. So, allow yourself to feel. Don't try to think your way out of it. Just go back to the heart and allow the feelings, and you'll be on your path right there.
Beautiful. Yeah, and if any of this resonates with you and you're needing some help out of your situation, get in touch with us. Um, we're all not one size fits all, but in energy medicine, we've got a beautiful collection of modalities to help in this region. So thanks, Jeff. We'll be connecting soon.
Thank you, Veruschka. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.